The Traxxas Mini Maxx. It was perhaps the most requested RC car that I've known since I started in the hobby about 4 years ago. But now that it's here, there's been a lot of controversy and debate about whether it is worth the wait. My name is Falcon, welcome to Falcon's Hobbies, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my first impressions of the Traxxas Mini Maxx. That'll include what upgrades we've done to the truck already, what issues we've had with it because there have been a few, and ultimately what my thoughts are on the truck so far. So we'll start with a brief overview of the truck and then go to a driving demonstration, and then we'll wrap it up with just final thoughts. I will preface this video by explaining that this isn't meant to be a review and nor should it be taken as one. I have only put 10 battery packs through mine. My brother's put about the same amount through his, so that's not really enough to go off of for a review. So this video is just going to be going over my initial impressions of the truck with what experience I have with it so far. So these are two Mini Maxes. This one's mine. This one's my brother's. Here's the trucks without their bodies. There have been a couple upgrades that my brother and I have done to both of ours. The first is being this wheelie bar, which honestly they don't really need because they don't really want to wheelie all that much. Even my brother's, and we'll get to why he should wheelie more in a bit. But yeah, we both got the wheelie bars. Mine is actually quite squeaky. And they both have a TSM receiver in here. Otherwise, in terms of performance, mine is pretty much exactly the same as stock. I have added a ESC fan and a heatsink to the motor. And this is my brother's. He's done more. Obviously, the wheelie bar and the TSM receiver. But he's also put the VXL system that used to be in his slash 4x4 on here. And he's also put the skid plates on the body. I also have the skid plates for my body, but I'm planning to get a green body to match my Haas. So this is just, I'm not going to put them on this body. This is just going to be like bash body type stuff. So moving on from upgrades, with what experience we have of them so far, what are our initial thoughts? And obviously there's been a lot of discussion online about this. Lots of people seem to think the Mini Maxx is a letdown. Looking at these as what they're meant to be, which is small scale RC cars that are very portable to bring anywhere, they are, in my opinion, superior to a lot of other ones, like the Armour Groms or MJX Hypergos or High Boxings, mainly because when you're driving, they actually do feel like larger scale monster trucks, unlike the Mojave Groms that my brother and I have, which are proper small scale RC cars. They have small electronics, they have a much smaller footprint, they are much lighter. And the problem with the Groms is that because they're so much smaller and so much lighter, they don't like terrain very much. These will handle the terrain a lot better, although not as good as a proper 10 scale truck. But the fact that these have 10 scale shocks makes them handle bumps a lot better than those Mojave Groms do and a lot of other small scale RC cars. We speed around both the trucks with the GNSS analyzer. Mine with the original BL2S system got 30 miles per hour, which is right on par with what Traxxas says it'll do. And my brother's with the VXL system got 34. So the VXL system is a slightly faster system. It's a 200 kV higher motor and a stronger ESC. And one note while we're on the topic of the system, I do think that this thing should have probably come with VXL. The BL2S is fine for it. It has a decent amount of power. It has a decent amount of speed. But it feels much more at home when you're using this system. This one, does feel a little bit sluggish and underpowered for it. This is good for a kid. I can understand why they put it in for a kid. But for the $270 price range, they should have had the VXL system. Because I think the VL2 is a little bit underpowered, I'm going to be putting my brother's VXL ESC into mine and running it with the BL2S motor. Because I think the problems with the BL2S system comes from the ESC. I think the motor's solid. I think the ESC is the problem. So coming up, we're going to have a video on that. Now, before we move on to the driving demonstration, let's talk about the problems that my brother and I have had. And there's only 3 of them. And one of them isn't really a problem. But the BL2S motor has an integrated fan right there. It's attached to the motor shaft, so it spins at the same speed as the motor to help cool it. That fan broke off the shaft for mine, so it just free spins. It really doesn't do much cooling, which is why I have this. I put the heatsink on this because the motor can no longer cool itself effectively, so it needs something like this. I'm probably going to have to get a fan too. The next problem is one that a lot of people have been having, and that's with the differential. Because my brother upgraded his system to VXL, even though he does only run it on 2S, he did blow out the original planetary spider gears in the differential, and he replaced them with the bevel gears. So that is something to watch out for. Although I haven't had any issues with the differentials. I think it's usually when you just upgrade to a better power system. And then the third problem isn't really a problem, but it's these receiver boxes. They're not even really a receiver box. They're just a cover that goes over the receiver. They're completely open underneath. They're not waterproof in any way, and they're a pain to deal with. So Traxxas really should have come up with a better design for the receiver box, because this just kind of sucks. Online, a lot of people have been complaining about the chassis. We have had some very harsh impacts directly on the chassis. I mean, just out here, like right out there, I jumped it over the ditch, and it slammed down onto the concrete culvert down in the ditch, straight on right here. It would have delivered all the force of the impact into the chassis. The chassis is fine. We've had plenty more impacts like that. The chassis have not given us any issues. All the people saying that they're weak, they're either not giving you the full story, or there's just some bad batches on the chassis, because we haven't broken any parts on this apart from that differential. But anyway, with all that said, let's get on to the driving demonstration. Alrighty, so the Mini Maxx drives pretty nicely on grass. Although, depending on the height of the grass, you're going to run into it struggling a bit, because it is low to the ground. Gravel and dirt is really where you're going to have the most fun with it, I think. Especially when you have TSM like we do. And again, this is the one that's almost fully stocked. So it's got the BL2 system, all that. The only upgrades are that wheelie bar, which it doesn't really use because it doesn't have enough torque to lift up, and the TSM. And just for an example, I'm going to turn the TSM off here so you can see how like a little part of the drive without the TSM on. Alrighty, now for the VXL upgraded one, and again, this is running 2S, not 3S. See, that is one issue with these, even with when it has enough power to wheelie, they tend to jump up, and then I just don't want to wheelie, which is weird. With the T7, it does kind of feel like a smaller version of my Haas, although the Haas is a much different animal. This obviously is a lot bouncier because it's lower to the ground and just smaller in general, and it's okay. Your TSM works better than mine. The suspension doesn't work quite as well. And yeah, you're gonna need TSM if you want to drive it like this and really have fun with it in dirt. Fail. Okay, I've got a slightly different angle for you for the VXL. We're on top of one of the dirt mounds, so. As you can see, with the VXL power, even though it is only 2S, it has a lot more torque and it's just a lot stronger of a power system, so it can do stuff a lot easier. You just don't want to wheelie on the dirt like my Haas will do it ethically. it'll just tear into the ground. But this, we really don't want to. Alright, so now we're gonna try them with something that we haven't even tested them on ourselves. You're gonna get a genuine reaction to how they handle the jumps because we haven't tested on the jumps yet. So we're gonna start at the 25-degree jump and then move up to the 45-degree and see what happens. And you already failed. And that is something we've noticed, we've heard from other people. They like to nose down when you're jumping. Okay, alrighty. The Excel off the 25-degree. As expected, it doesn't even phase it. 25-degree jump is more designed for our... Okay. The 25-degree jump is more designed for our two-wheel drive stuff that can't get very good rotation in the air. So, little four-wheel drive monster truck should be able to handle 25 degrees just fine. Okay, now we're gonna do the 45-degree jump, and I honestly don't know what's gonna happen here. But it handled the 25-degree jump just fine, except for that first jump because I messed up. But let's see how the BL2S, like the stock system and everything, handles the 45-degree launch ramp that I can get triple back off with my Hobbies.
Not even one.
Yeah, just can't seem the back. So I guess the question's gonna be, will the VXL be able to back? Because the BL2 certainly can't. Now, for the 45-degree jump. Now go for backflip. Moment of truth, will the VXL be able to do what the BL2S cannot? Oh.
Did we bring tools with?
That might need to go back in. Otherwise it looks fine. Okay, so there's no visible damage on the chassis, and you guys all saw that. That was a very harsh impact. So all those stories about Mini Maxx chassis breaking in half at slight bumps, either the people weren't being truthful about what was actually going on and what caused it to break, or they just had a bad batch, because this is fine. But with that screw hanging out like that, we pushed it back in, but we can't screw it back in without our tools, which we don't have at the moment. VXL can't do anything else, but it didn't seem to want to do it back. I mean, it was doing it, but it didn't rotate very quickly. So it might just be these things can't really do a backflip, which would kind of suck. But maybe to be able to do it with the 3S, but we don't have a 3S battery. So for final thoughts, I do really like these trucks. I think they are worth the $270 over other mini RC cars you can get for cheaper, mainly because they do drive and feel like a 10-scale RC car, but they're in a much smaller form. Also, the much larger battery that you get with these from instead of what you get on other mini RC cars makes the price gap between these and other ones a little bit more forgiving. I do think it should have come with the VXL stock, but all in all, this is a nice truck. If you want to get a small RC car that's portable, that you can take on vacations, it will feel more like what your larger ones feel like, you should definitely get these because they drive very nicely. And like I said before, any horror stories online about chassis breaking and stuff, take all of those with a grain of salt, because it's about a lot of sudden altercations with solid and immovable objects, and they haven't broken. So, yeah. But anyways, that's all I have for today, guys. The actual review on these will be coming out probably around 6 months after we have plenty of time to test them. And until next time, goodbye.